Hey everybody, what's going on? It is 9:30, Wednesday, July 8th. This is the second episode, second broadcast live on YouTube around the world. Follow us on Twitter or on Instagram. You are watching the Mock and Roll Show. Alongside me is one of our co-hosts here, and he's the newest addition to the show, J3, who for the rest of the night will be known as Jason Pierre-Paul's existing index finger. Johnny, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yes, I'm still a finger. I'm not amputated. I'm still around, so that's always a good thing.
By the way, Johnny,
yeah.
I do want to say something real quick. For those of you who may remember this, Johnny and I had a sports/wrestling/music/whatever we wanted radio show several years ago, so it's good to be back on the air with you, my friend. We had the Rax and J3 show at Pipco once. So anyway, didn't want to steal your thunder there, but man, it's good to be back on the air with you.
And I will go one better. The three of us were on that show together at one point. Damien came on as a special guest to one show.
That was our lowest rated show, I think.
Yes. That's actually why we're not on the air anymore. But listen, potato, potato, it is what it is. Speaking of Damien, also known as Nickelback's #1 fan, how you doing, bud?
I'm living the dream, and you know what? Listen, Nickelback is totally underrated. No, I'm just totally kidding. Nickelback is terrible. That probably was your lowest rated show. I mean, listen, if I'm a Nickelback fan, automatically I'm dragging everything down. So we're here tonight to talk about fantasy. I'm excited about what we have on slate for tonight. I'm excited to see what you guys have to say about everything. But let's start with, since Johnny was not here with us the last show, let's start with you, Johnny. Sean and I shared a little bit of our philosophies during the first show. So let's let our viewers and listeners hear what your take is on fantasy football. What's the big picture, 20,000-foot view from Johnny?
Well, before I get there, I just want to let everyone know that I saw last week's show. You need me. You need me on the show.
Wait, is that because we need diversity?
You need more facial hair. I'll put it that way.
That's true. Wasn't diversity an old wooden ship?
That's actually historically accurate.
Anyways,
hey, go ahead.
my fantasy philosophy, it taking the best player at that spot. Again, now that our league, actually the league that I run, the fantasy league that we all play in, that us three, is a league that I started 10 years ago. So I wear a lot of hats when it comes to planning but typically what I'll do is running back round one. You need to get that base running back. I made a couple mistakes a couple years ago. I took Michael Vick, #1 overall. And it's actually between him or Aaron Rodgers, but is Michael Vick his first full year as a starter for the Eagles, and I learned my lesson. So yeah, typically it's I like to fill out the core positions obviously first. Usually I'll go running back, look at receivers, and then running back, receiver, then maybe tight end, then a receiver. But again, it all depends on who's there, because again, the draft never goes how you think it's gonna go.
And let's be honest, while he does wear many hats, 45% of them are Yankee hats. 45% of them are New York Giants hats, and then there's another 10% or so that are like no fear hats from 1993.
Very confident math there, Sean. 10% or so. Your math teachers are proud.
Well, I do give 110%.
Listen, wait, that doesn't work either. Last week our math was horrible, Damien. This week Johnny joins the crew.
Oh, listen, I do nothing to help the math status quo here at all.
John, listen. Last week Damien and I spent some time poking fun at each other's draft histories and mostly Damien's draft histories. But since you're talking about yours and you're talking about your draft strategy, I think it's really important to point out that ultimately for our listeners and our viewers, your draft strategy really just circles around one thing, and that's making sure you draft not the quality of player, but the quantity of players, so you have enough guys to drop so you can pick up 3,000 free agents.
All right. Here we go. Let's address the elephant in the room. I know you're going to talk about it since we are on live.
Fat?
I did in fact draft Odell Beckham last year.
Oh, it comes out.
You know, I've got help for this. I'm seeking more help for this. I drafted Odell Beckham. He would have been I believe, a 12th round keeper for me this year.
Let's just have a moment. Can we just have a moment for this guy? Just a moment of seriously, radio silence right now.
Hey, here's one for me, and here's one for John's dead draft pick.
Yeah, I was running out of room. I was having a lot of guys get hurt. Odell Beckham wasn't even playing yet. I think it was like week 3, and I needed room. Who would have known? But yeah. And
you needed room then. Now you and Odell Beckham need to get a room.
Yeah, but I still like my keepers. I still got two quality keepers, so I'm so happy.
Good. Well, hey, let's play a little game to start off this week's show. It's based on an article I found at NFL.com earlier today by Michael Fabiano, and this was more of a list from him, so to speak. But actually, I sort of want to turn into a little game between the two of you. And Johnny, I'm going to start with you. John, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about a player and a prediction, and I want you to answer it with it would. I want you to restate it with it would shock me or it would not shock me if. Okay? So Here we go. The first one is it wouldn't shock, or excuse me, it would or it wouldn't shock you if Joseph Randle finishes as a top 10 running back this year.
As a top 10, it would not shock me.
And why do you say that?
Well, because he's running behind arguably the best run, the best lineman in the league in the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
He's a talented guy. You saw that last year. Obviously, he's not great at stealing things. He's a good running back. And he's going to have plenty of opportunity because with, even if Darren McFadden ends up starting the beginning of the year, like I was telling a lot of people in the league, there's very rare teams that have, concrete starters or backups. Everyone's in a split backfield, split time. And plus, week 1 or week 2, McFadden's going to get hurt. And Randall's going to get the lion's share of the work. And I think he is a talented enough guy, and again, he has a great supporting cast. Listen, if you told me in the year that he's a top 5 running back, I still wouldn't be surprised.
Damien, quick 10-second response to that. You agree, disagree?
I totally agree for all of the reasons John listed.
Okay.
Oh, Damien, and let me add about that I will not be at all surprised. In fact, I'll be shocked if he is not a 3rd-round draft pick come August when drafts are starting.
Okay. Damien, same idea. You would be or you wouldn't be shocked if Amir Abdullah leads all Lions running backs in fantasy points, which would totally screw me.
I would not be shocked. I think that he will lead all Lions running backs in fantasy points in PPR, and I think Joyce Bell will lead Lions running backs in standard, but it wouldn't shock me if Abdullah took the reins and ran with that job altogether.
Do you like him? Do you like him as a sleeper?
I do. I think he's not going to be drafted as a sleeper, though. I think he's going to be drafted as somebody that everybody's aware of come draft time. I don't think he'll be a sleeper. I think he's Reggie Bush 2.0, except younger and maybe better.
John, your thoughts?
Yeah, it would surprise me. I think that's joke. I think it's Joke Bell's position. I think it's his job.
That was not a Freudian slip, by the way.
I know.
Joke Bell.
Yeah. I think Amir. Listen, right now he's right around an 8th round draft pick. Okay. I think if you draft him, you're not drafting for this year. You're going to draft him for keeper purposes. I think if you ask the same question next year, I say yes. But for this year, it would really surprise me.
Okay.
I'm not sold on him.
Not sold on the guy, huh?
No.
All right. Next up, I'm actually going to take the reins on this one, and I already had this discussion with Damien, so I'm going to do this one with Johnny. But John, I'll let you start this one. Johnny, it would or it would not shock you if C.J. Spiller catches 70-plus passes in New Orleans.
Oh, it would not. Actually, I'd be surprised if he didn't catch that many balls.
I agree with you 100%. Damon and I were having a discussion off the air before the show about, Mark Ingram's value, Mark Ingram's place versus some other backs. And one of the things that I had said to Damian was, while if you're talking about just rushing yards and carries, Mark Ingram is the guy that you're going to take when you look at the Saints' offensive setup from a running back's perspective. I still feel like that team is running back by committee more than anything. While yes, C.J. Spiller is the guy you think of when you think of their third down running back coming over from Buffalo and showing that when healthy, the guy just has explosive big play capability. I don't think he's going to be limited to that. I think you're going to see him. I think you're going to see him line up in that slot. Losing Kenny Stills, losing Jimmy Graham. I know Brandon Cooks is going to be solid, but I feel like they're going to look for some more explosiveness alongside, Cooks and Colston. And like I said, I think you're going to see C.J. Spiller line up at wideout a lot this year.
Well, it's funny because with C.J. Spiller, he reminds me of is, listen, he had maybe not as fast as Darren Sproles, but he fits that mold of player. But I think he's a stronger player, physically stronger, more dominating, in the physicality than Sproles is. But I don't think you lose anything with his athleticism. So you put that type player with Drew Brees, he's going to fill that role that really was missing without Darren Sproles being there. And right. I really think he's going to flourish in that role. That's how he should have been used last year.
Settle something between Damon and I. I'm going to let you have the final say on this one. Okay. Johnny, at the end of the fantasy season, who has more fantasy points, C.J. Spiller or Mark Ingram?
I'll say Mark Ingram.
Ah!
There it is.
Just the reason is, I think Spiller will get a lot of catches, but I think when they're down inside, it's going to be all Ingram. Plus, you're going to have a couple of the Ingram, like how did he break that tackle touchdown, from 20 yards out, where I just think touchdown-wise, that's going to put him over the top, where I think you'll see a lot more yards, maybe yak yards and stuff like that out of Spiller, but I think the touchdowns are what's going to put it over the top for Ingram. I'm saying Ingram gets 9 rushing touchdowns this year.
You heard it. All right, here we go. One of the big things, one of the big things that it's easy to fall in love with every fantasy season, even if you're not looking to draft the guy to start him, everybody wants to find the hot, young rookie quarterback that could be the guy that blows up. And if you're in a dynasty league, maybe you carry him over and you got him with a late pick. So, Damian, it would shock you, or it would not shock you, if Marcus Mariota makes a fantasy impact as a rookie.
It would totally shock me if he made an impact as a rookie. I have no interest in Marcus Mariota at all in redraft leagues. If you're talking dynasty, yeah, sure, I'll take him in dynasty. If you're talking 2 quarterback leagues, maybe he's a second quarterback. But, man, the quarterback position is so deep. To take Marcus Mariota his first year he plays for the Tennessee Titans, the Titans. They're not a good team. Mariota is not going to be, even if he's a good quarterback, he's not going to be fantasy relevant. It would shock me if he was fantasy relevant this year.
I just want to mention there that Wisenhunt has suggested though that they could use him, and they may look to use him like a Russell Wilson style quarterback.
You can enjoy taking him. I will not be.
Okay. One other thing, by the way, keep in mind the dude did rush for 2,200 yards and 29 touchdowns at Oregon. Now I know that's not the NFL. It's pretty damn impressive, Johnny.
Oh man, get out of here, Mariota. He.
Now wait, take out your Jameis Winston love first.
Well, listen, my love for Jameis Winston is rightly put when you're talking NFL caliber.
Agreed.
Reason being is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are significantly getting better. Listen, they got Mike James in the backfield. He's probably going to be the starter. And obviously, who else is there? I know Mike James is there. Is Muscle Hamster still there, or is he leave?
Yeah, he's there.
He's still there.
Whether they like it or not.
But, you look at her team as a whole. You have Mike Evans, who's probably the second best rookie receiver out of that amazing class last year, and you have Vincent Jackson. Again, I don't want to get on a Jameis Winston kick, but Mariota, I don't think he has the intangibles to succeed. I think he reminds me a lot like Johnny Manziel, where he's a flashy. In college, he was very flashy. But that's more of the offense he ran. I am not sold on him. I would not take him. I would not take him probably in the last round of the draft. To me, he's waiver fodder.
So it sounds like maybe more than the intangibles. It sounds like this year he would need the expendables to be successful.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Damien, I'm sure you hated that one, that comment. Johnny, I know you're gonna have very personal feelings about this one, as relates to your fantasy team. But here we go.
Yes, sir.
It would shock you, or it would not shock you, if Brandon Cooks finishes as a top 10 fantasy wideout. Damien and I already had this discussion, and I can tell you exactly what we think. But you go ahead.
Listen, I would love for him to be a top 10 wide receiver, but it's not going to happen. I think he's a top 20 guy. I don't think he's a top 10 guy, because they're still gonna feed the Spiller machine. He's going to be there. He's going to demand the ball. Colston didn't go anywhere. He's still going to be there. So Brandon Cooks, he's going to get his catches. But yeah, I think top 20, not top 10.
Damien and I are on the opposite. Damien, if you don't mind, I'm going to take this one.
No, wait, hold on. I want to back up a step. Johnny, I totally agree with you, man. I don't think he'll be top 10 at all. Do you want to make a trade?
Yeah! Right here.
Okay, go ahead, Sean.
I'll trade you Denver's defense for him. Here we go. Damien, I think I speak for both of us when I say I absolutely think he will finish as a top 10 fantasy wideout. Statistically, New Orleans Saints wideouts have put up good points. Jimmy Graham is gone. Somebody's got to fill that key target void. I don't think Colston's going to be the guy because I feel like defenses, for the most part, have kind of figured out how to deal with that 6'4.5" guy. Spiller's going to make an impact. I don't have any doubt. Ingram is still going to be there. But I think the loss of Kenny Stills and Jimmy Graham is exactly what Brandon Cooks needs to step up to the forefront of that wide receiver position for the New Orleans Saints. Anything else, Damien, there?
He's going to be a target monster. Top 10, I would be surprised but not shocked if he was top 10. I think it's possible. I think he's top 15 for sure.
Agreed.
Okay. Damien, it would or would not shock you if Duke Johnson leads all Browns running backs in fantasy points from the U.
Can I answer by saying that I don't care? Because the second you say Browns running backs, I tune out. I would not be shocked if Duke Johnson did it, but I don't care.
All right, Johnny, let's see if Damien can do this. Damien, can you name the other two running backs that he would be in competition with on the Browns?
Isaiah Crowell and Terrence West.
I hate you so much.
You're good, man.
Johnny, anything to add there aside from the fact that you also probably don't care about the Browns?
No, I do care. I do care because I think Duke Johnson could be a good or viable late round keeper for some people. Listen, Duke Johnson from Miami, he was an explosive running back. Again, I'm a big college guy as well as NFL guy. And having seen Duke Johnson play against really one of the nation's best defenses in Florida State, because I'm a huge Florida State fan, Duke Johnson tore him up. He's a good running back, and I think his style, he's fast, he's physical. He reminds me of Ray Rice 4 years ago. That's what he reminds me of. He's a low center of gravity, quick, fast runner with some power. And honestly, I think this year he will be the lead rusher in Cleveland. And I think I think his star's bright, man. He's a smart kid. He doesn't get in trouble. And that's what the Browns need. They need a player with their head sewn on right, because right now they're having a lot of issues with that.
Johnny, can I ask you a question, man? Let's test your fantasy knowledge now. Can you name the Browns' top 2 wide receivers? I'm talking wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. By the way, Josh McCown is the quarterback.
From last year.
No,
Are you sure
this
it's
year.
not Johnny Idiot Face that's the quarterback? As what's his name called him that? Seth Rollins?
Is Miles Austin still there? I think he is, right?
He is not. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Dwayne Bowe and Brian Hartline. That box will be stacked, sir.
Yeah. I try to make a case for Brian Hartline, but I can't. So moving on.
All right, here we go, Johnny. It wouldn't or it would shock you if DeMarco Murray scores fewer than 200 fantasy points this year.
Oh,
by the way, last year 294.10.
He's not getting close to that. He's not getting close to that.
So you think he's going to have less than 2/3 of what he had last year?
I'm saying I think he's right around 160 fantasy points, and I think that's
that is that is just barely over half of what he had last year.
And I'll tell you why. One, the Eagles' offensive line I think is half as good as Dallas's. That's the beginning. Two, the type of player that DeMarco Murray is not the type of player that Chip Kelly uses or uses correctly. I'm not saying he's a LaShawn McCoy, but they run fast offense. Quick drops, dump it off to Darren Sproles. Because I remember we had this conversation last year. I believe you and I had this conversation about how I was a little worried about LaShawn McCoy, even though I took him #1 overall. I was worried that Sproles would eat into his production, and I believe you said he wouldn't, and that ended up being totally flip-flopped. Where
I forgot all about that.
What?
I forgot all about that.
Yeah. So I think DeMarco Murray is a good running back, but I think in that offense he will not do well. And plus, you got to think he's playing against the NFC East, which is typically teams that have great, if not really good, defensive lines. DeMarco Murray for his career,
except for the Cowboys.
Cowboys' defensive line isn't terrible. Their problem's not defensive line. Their problem is their defensive backs and Sean Lee staying on the field. I think their defensive line is serviceable. Well, again, he never had to run against them. I'm saying more or less, the Giants of the world. DeMarco Murray, I think, averaged under 3 yards a carry career against the Giants. And I think the Redskins also have a good defensive line. I really don't think he's going to. I think this is a big mistake on his part going there.
I was gonna say I don't think it's a mistake on his part for going there because listen, hey, if you have a big year and you eat 400 carries and you're taking the risk that this could be the year that you're absolutely bust. Listen, man, you cash in on every dollar you can get.
Oh yeah. Money wise, it made out for him, but
that's a smart play from there. Yeah, Damien.
Well, I would be shocked if he doesn't reach that. I actually have DeMarco Murray, I think, as my #6 overall pick. I don't think he's going to do what he did in Dallas last year. Johnny, I respectfully disagree. I think that the offensive line in Philadelphia, definitely not Dallas's line, but it was ranked one of the highest last year. They lost one important piece in Evan Mathis. They're keeping most of their guys. DeMarco Murray, I think, is perfect for that system. Chip Kelly runs the ball. DeMarco Murray's a one-cut runner. I think DeMarco Murray, I wouldn't be shocked if he was the #1 overall rushing leader this year, to be honest with you. If he gets injured, he won't hit 200 points. If he stays healthy, he'll go way over 200 points.
All right, a couple more of these, and then we're going to move on to our next topic, and we can revisit this list next week because I like this discussion. Damien, it would shock you, or it wouldn't shock you, if Austin Seferian-Jenkins records 60-plus receptions.
I guess, you know what, I'm going to take the under on that one. I think he'll have maybe 50 receptions. He's totally unproven. He's a tall guy. He plays with a rookie quarterback. He's got 2 good wideouts. Here's what I will say. I'm going to take the under on it. I'm not interested in Seferian-Jenkins. I think he's being hyped up, but I'm not going to take him.
Johnny, I'm going to throw this over to you, but I just want to say, well, I think Austin Seferian-Jenkins is going to be like a deep sleeper. You know what they say, man? A young quarterback's best friend is a pacifier, and that's a tight end.
Yeah, he listen. Jameis Winston in college really made a point to use his tight end a lot. Um, so yeah, I think he'll be good. I don't think he'll be. I think he'll end up probably right outside the top 10 on tight ends. I think he'll probably be 11 or 12. I think he'll have a kind of year that Larry Donnell had last year, where you'll see some flashes, but he'll probably end up right outside that top 10.
So are you taking over or under on 60?
I'm going to take the under. Yeah, I'll take the under.
All right, just to throw in the you know, my clear-cut answer there, I also will take the under. I'm going to go with what you guys said. I'm going to go just under. I'm going to say 50 to 55 catches as well. All right, here we go. It would or it would not shock you, Damien, if Justin Forsett catches 70-plus passes as a Raven.
I'll take that, and I'll take it a step further. It would shock me if he doesn't catch 70 passes as a Raven. Mark Trestman, you may have heard of him. He of 102 catches last year for Matt Forte is now the offensive coordinator over in Baltimore. And as a result, man, Forsett is going to catch a ton of passes. He is going. I see him at 80, 90 passes this year. I think Forsett is going to be cracking the top 10 in running backs. I'll put that out there. Would not shock me.
John.
You ever see the movie Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson's in? It's called Broken.
I don't watch.
Well,
movies.
Sam Jackson was a guy made of glass, right? Or he was, very brittle bones. And that's what Steve Smith is to me. And that's really all they have to throw to, him and Dennis Pitta. So yeah, I think he's going to be over that. I think Forsett's going to catch a lot of balls because really, who else are you going to throw to?
Well, I will say this, and you both make good points. To Damien's point about playing under Mark Trestman, which I'm glad you brought that up. Justin Forsett is an incredibly versatile player coming out of the backfield, and if anybody considering or wondering about whether or not Justin Forsett's potential with Mark Trestman, aside from Matt Forte, here are the other names of some players that have played under Mark Trestman that were also PPR superstars: Charlie Garner, Michael Pittman, and Larry Centers. There you go.
There it is.
All right. Last but not least, and like I said, we'll pick this list up next week. Damien. Actually, Johnny.
Thank you.
It would or it would not shock you if Matt Forte fails to finish with over 200 fantasy points.
It would shock me. Because I think Forte is a guy, even without Trestman there, I know he's in a John Fox offense, but he's a guy that, again, his yards per carry might go down, but I still think he's going to catch a lot of balls. I think he's going to get a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns. I still think he's a top 10 running back, and I still think he gets over 200 fantasy points.
I think the guy is definitely still going to be a first-round pick. I think he's a top 10 pick. Damien knows that I am a fan of Forte. I am concerned that without Trestman, he will lose 30 to 40 points alone on receiving yards. I am worried about it. And he's pushing 30. So I love Matt Forte as a back, and I've told Damien that over and over and over again. But I do have concerns with that offensive change. Damien, what are your thoughts as a Bears fan?
Well, Sean, I gotta say, first of all, I would be shocked if he didn't hit 200 points. I think he's not going to get much over that for all of the reasons that we've talked about here before. Sean, are you coming over to the DeMarco Murray dark side? Are you taking Murray at 6?
Right now.
We'll put it on record right now. Put it on record.
I'm going to tell you right now, after having this discussion and looking at this list, I feel doomed. I feel like I'm ready to trade. I feel, I think football season is coming. Thanksgiving is a big thing in football season. I'm about ready to trade my 6th pick for a Wawa Gobbler pre-order. Good Lord. All right. Well, listen. Like I said, I want to pick this up next week. I really like this list and this sort of discussion. So let's continue on that. right now, let's talk about this week's position. Obviously, for those who caught last week's show, and for new listeners, which, by the way, you'll be able to subscribe to our show as a podcast on iTunes. So you can search for the Mock and Roll Show. Our debut episode is up there, and then we'll get this one up there as quickly as we can after we go on the air. So in the next couple of days. So make sure to look us up on iTunes and subscribe. Also, we have a new Instagram page. On that page, after every show, I'm going to be listing our top 10 predictions as far as our draft pick order for the position that we discussed this week. After the show, I'll be listing the wide receiver ones, the first 10, according to myself, John, and Damien. And then according to the stat that Damien has set up, which we'll talk about the new formula, the sauce formula. We'll be talking about that later on as well. Also, you can follow us on Twitter. It's kind of empty right now, but please follow us on Twitter. Stay in touch with the show. You can tweet at us. If you have something to chime in on Twitter with or Instagram, you can hashtag it with WR1, and we'll talk about it on the show. Our Instagram and Twitter are at Mock and Roll Show. All right, enough of those cheap plugs. Damien, you used to cheap plugs. We did the band thing.
I've heard it all before.
All right, here we go. So this week we're going to talk about wide receiver ones. We go by the ESPN list, and then we will discuss that. Our league is the ESPN league, so that is the league. That's the scoring in the league type that we focus on most here. And Damien, if you want to take it from there.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to count down from 10 through 1, and what I'm going to do is throw these out. You guys can discuss them, see how you feel about them, and I will throw in a little bit of my rankings. I know you guys have your rankings, and we'll see what we have. Again, we're focusing on the ESPN rankings. This is of June 24th, as of, I should say. Here's the top 10 wide receivers, and we're going to pretend like this is a mock draft. So if we were drafting, if we were going to take the 10th wide receiver on the board here, would you take this person in this spot? Would you mock this person, or would you not? Number 10, according to ESPN, is Randall Cobb. What do we think, boys?
Johnny, go for it.
Randall LaDonald Cobb II. I would take 10. He's actually 10th on my list. Listen, 206 fantasy points last year. He's a touchdown machine. He scored 12 touchdowns last year. Yeah.
Do you know when the guy received his first communion? Jesus, you know his middle name, which is a weird middle name.
But I think 10's a good spot. Actually, might be a little low, but I do have him 10 on my list.
All right. Randall Cobb. Here's the problem I have with Packers wideouts. I love them both. I love Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. The issue I have is while Aaron Rodgers throws the hell out of the ball and really does a good job of feeding the mouths there, on a week-to-week basis, I don't know who's getting the touchdowns. And it really depends on the coverage and how they break off the coverage. It's hard for me. I'm not gonna dispute that Randall Cobb, should be considered a top 10 wide receiver. It's hard for me to say where the guy can be taken because you really just don't know where the ball's going to go. For my money, and please feel free to jump in, either of you. I don't know if there is a closer, as far as talent and production capability, pair of wide receivers on one team as Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson. I don't know.
And I'll tell you, I wouldn't. And again, I don't know what circumstances would happen, but I wouldn't be opposed to you actually having both Packers wide receivers on the team.
Yeah.
I'd be good with that. I'll jump in. I'll say that for me, I don't even have Randall Cobb in my top 10. For me, he's wide receiver number 11. I have him bumped out of the top 10, so I'm going to go ahead and give the disagreement stamp to the ESPN rankings here. Randall Cobb's going to be just fine, but his upside is capped. Ultimately, he's the number 2 wide receiver, granted, in a great offense. But he's 2 wide receivers. They have Devontae Adams up and coming. Out of the top 10 for me. Definitely in the top 12, but out of the top 10.
Timmy, let me ask you a question. Who is on your list that is not on ESPN's list?
That is a brilliant question. I love it. I have T.Y. Hilton, number
I
one.
love T.Y. Hilton.
Andrew Luck, I have him at number 9 overall. ESPN, mind you, does not even have him in the top 10. I think ESPN made with that.
That's absurd. I love T.Y. Hilton. In fact, the year T.Y. Hilton came out as a rookie, he was my sleeper pick. I remember saying, to a bunch of people, like, T.Y. Hilton is going to be a beast. He's going to be a beast, and he did turn out to be that. But anyway, all right, what do you got for 9?
Number 9, we have one. I'm a Bears fan, so I got to put him out there. Alshon Jeffrey.
They drafted Kevin White, didn't they?
Indeed, they did.
I think I like Alshon Jeffrey. I don't know that I would move him higher than 9. I'm concerned that it could be a you don't know what you've got till it's gone situation. In that I think he owes some of his success to Brandon Marshall. Drawing some coverage. Alshon Jeffrey's a more explosive wide receiver than Marshall was. I think Alshon Jeffrey is going to draw all of his own coverage and some of Marshall's coverage, because I don't think people are going to be too afraid of Kevin White right out of the gate. It wouldn't surprise me if the first few weeks until Kevin White really makes a few big plays. It wouldn't surprise me if Alshon Jeffrey is a little bit slow out of the gate, but then picks it up from there. I think 9's safe. He's got the talent. He's got a good gunslinger quarterback who, when he can complete passes to his own team, is fantastic. So I'll take him at 9.
Yeah, I think 9. I think 9's okay. He scored 172 fantasy points last year in our league. Again, our league, you get more bonuses for long touchdowns. But I think he ends up right around the same, maybe a little bit less than that. But I think 9's a good spot. He kind of steps into that Brandon Marshall role, where now Kevin White's going to kind of jump into that, that tall, second receiver spot that Alshon Jeffrey was in. I think Alshon Jeffrey can get number 1 coverage now, where he probably wasn't last year. I think he'll probably end up right around 100 and 180 fantasy points. Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. I'm not sure, but I think number 9's a good spot for him.
I think that's good, and really, I think the bottom 2 guys here, I have Alshon at 10, by the way. The bottom 2 guys, the 9 and 10, I think those guys are sort of in a separate tier from the guys we're about to talk about. I think they're a little bit lower, really, than the guys we're about to talk about, starting with number 8 on the ESPN ranking, A.J. Green.
John, you want me to go or you want to go?
No, you can.
I'm taking A.J. Green on the rise a little bit. I'm going to move him up 1 spot to number 7, because I think he's going to swap spots with that guy. I think this year, the guy who comes up number 7 on this list, by the way, is unfortunately going to see a bit of a downslide. I love A.J. Green. I think his best years are still ahead of him. The guy just seems to have a super high ceiling from a talent perspective. I know people want to dog on Andy Dalton, the red rifle at quarterback, because he's had a tough time in some big games, but the guy knows how to feed his hungriest receiver. I don't see a lack or a lack of production from A.J. Green. I think he's going to have a solid year. I think a lot of it too is going to depend on how Jeremy Hill really emerges in this offense from the running back spot. The better Jeremy Hill performs, the better those running backs perform, the more focus they're going to have to put on the box, which could leave you with single coverage on A.J. Green on a player or a player 5 that they shouldn't. So yeah, I like A.J. Green, but I like him 1 spot higher.
Yeah, A.J. Green last year, he had 5 fantasy games where he scored 0 points.
But he was injured for a few of those.
No, I know. Let me get to my point. I think this year's gonna be a much better year for him. If he can stay healthy, Again, that has been one of his issues is staying on the field. When he's on the field, he's a top. I think he's a top 5 talent when he's on the field. He could be higher, but I think 8 is okay for him right now because of his history. Again, with it being a down year when he scored 155 fantasy points, I think 8 with an asterisk. I think he could be higher.
Yeah, I actually have him at 8 as well. I agree with the ESPN rankings. I also agree with the ESPN rankings on the next guy on the list, number 7, who has been a monster for years and years and years, but now there's some fear about him. Calvin Johnson.
Megatron.
What do we think, Johnny?
And he just left.
You got Megatron at 7. Sean's ready to go here. He's got it. He's bringing out his Transformers dolls. I don't know.
I'm gonna have a good year. Tell me what you think, John.
On my list, I have Calvin Johnson actually a little bit higher. I have him at 6. But yeah, he's another guy who had a down year. Injury plagued. He missed 3 games. Really 4 games right in the middle of the season. Listen, he's a beast. I think when he's healthy, he was even in the games he did play, he wasn't healthy when he played these games. He probably played half the season banged up, and he missed a couple games just because they had to drag him off the field. Like I said, he's Calvin Johnson. He's a perennial 220 fantasy point guy. Like I said, I have him a little higher than 7. I have him at 6, but yeah, I would have him higher.
I'm a Decepticon overlord. I'll destroy everybody in the NFC North. In fact, hang on a second here.
I don't know what's happening.
I don't know either.
All hail Megatron! Brr. Anyway, okay. I think he shows a downfall. I think he shows a drop off this year. I do love Calvin Johnson. I think he is I think he's a once in a generation wide receiver. The problem is he's on the every generation Detroit Lions team that just can never get it together offensively. Their line is struggling. There's nothing new there. They can never seem to get a solid running game going. And when they do, it doesn't stay that way. And by the way, Matthew Stafford is still Matthew Stafford. And I think Matthew Stafford is a journeyman quarterback, if not for having had Calvin Johnson to bail him out for all these years. It was for Calvin Johnson. It was because of Calvin Johnson alone that there were years where Matthew Stafford, where it was considered a possible first or an definite second round quarterback pick in fantasy football. But after a while, you can only do so much. For yourself, and you need a little bit more help. And I just don't feel like Golden Tate alone is enough of an addition to bring in last year to make Calvin Johnson stay atop. I think defenses are going to start to figure him out. There's not much of a threat at the running game right now. I know they have that explosive rookie. I know they have Joique Bell, and I know they have Golden Tate. I just don't feel like it's. I think he needs more help, or he's going to see a drop off.
I have to jump in here. I actually, apparently I don't even know my own rankings. By the way, Sean, very nice job. I think that was the most number of times anybody has ever said Matthew Stafford in one situation. But I have to jump in. I don't even know. I had him at 7. I actually have Calvin Johnson all the way up at 4. Calvin Johnson, I'm going to go ahead and agree with Johnny. Calvin Johnson is Calvin Johnson. John, you said defenses are going to figure him out. The dude is 6'5". He is incredible. Defenses will never figure him out. It doesn't matter who you cover him with. He's a little bit of an injury risk, but I have him up at number 4. The number 6 guy is a guy who I happen to love this year. I want to see what you guys have to say. On the ESPN rankings, they have at number 6 among wide receivers, Julio Jones.
Julio! Sure it's not Coolio?
Yeah, Sean, you want to go or you want me to go?
Julio Jones. Explosive. Can Matty Ice get it done? That's my question. Can Matty Ice get it done? Julio Jones, I took him one year. Was it last year, John?
Yeah.
Last year, I had him as a stud wideout and somebody else,
Yeah,
and both of them got injured.
You had him 2 years ago.
They have ruined me. So, I don't know. Listen, I'm selling. I love Julio Jones. I think he has unbelievable talent, but I am selling on anything at Atlanta this year. I'm selling.
No, I'm taking him. I'm buying him. I actually have him at number 5 on my list. Listen, he's a 6'3" wide receiver running a 4.39 40. He's super talented. Matty Ice, I think, is good enough. Listen, you don't have to be a great quarterback to have and you see that with Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson. You need to be a great quarterback to feed a feature receiver. Listen, he's the type of guy where you put it up and he'll go get it. 200 fantasy points last year, and only 6 touchdowns for him. That will change this year. Again, I have him just at my 5th spot, so he is a top 5 receiver for me.
I got to say, Julio Jones is one of my guys this year. He's a guy I am absolutely targeting. Julio Jones, I have him all the way up at number 3. I think he's a top 3 wide receiver this year for 2 reasons. One, it's another year. Another year has gone by. Let's check our watches. That means that Roddy White is another year older. Julio Jones is the unquestioned number 1 wide receiver there. I also have a man named Kyle Shanahan for you. Kyle Shanahan happens to love his ex-receivers. You may remember a man called Andre Johnson. Julio Jones caught 102 passes last year. He is a target hog. He is going to beast out this year. There is nobody I like more than Julio Jones except for 2 other guys. We'll get to those. Julio Jones was on number 6. Number 5, according to ESPN, is one Jordy Nelson. What do you think, guys?
Jordy Ray Nelson. He's actually my number 7th pick. Listen, he's the 2nd highest scoring wide receiver last year. 271 fantasy points. Very hard to top because a lot of those touchdowns were long. It seemed like last year, again, he was on my fantasy team. It seemed like last year, at least once a game, he was catching a 40-plus yard touchdown. That is a very, very hard thing to duplicate. I think you will see a drop-off on him. Again, he's still a top 10 receiver. I got him at 7, but yeah, I don't have him as high as ESPN.
I don't remember a time where 2 fantasy wideouts were in the top 10 from the same team. I think both of them have top 10 talent, but it's hard to feed them both that many points. I mean, that's a lot of fantasy points,
Cut in 1 sec. I do remember a time when 2 wideouts from the same team were on the same top 10. It was last year, dude.
And it was both of them.
Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, and Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson.
All right. Well, in my defense, you read a lot more about fantasy football. During Christmas dinner.
It's a little tense, okay?
Yeah. So, again, I love the talent. I guess I'll keep him at 5. I don't know how many years in a row you can do the same thing. You know what I mean? And Green Bay has the talent. They do. But here's the thing. So what we're saying is not only are they going to have 2 I don't know, man. It's hard for me to take away from Jordy Nelson. But all I'm saying is you're talking about a team that is just producing fantasy monsters. This team is expected to produce 2 top 10 fantasy wideouts, and they do. 2 top 10 fantasy wideouts every year now with these 2 guys, right? The top or 2nd quarterback in fantasy football, and a top 5 fantasy running back. And it's just like they continue to do it, and I don't know how they keep on doing it. I don't know. I'll take him at 5. Why not? He's good enough. Aaron Rodgers. Discount double check. I'm good to 5.
I am very excited to share out the number 4 wide receiver, and I'll take him first, and I'll throw it out to Johnny, because Johnny is a Giants fan. I won't call you a Giants homer when it comes to fantasy, because you haven't been that, but you definitely are a Giants fan. Number 4 wide receiver according to ESPN is Odell Beckham. And for me, Odell Beckham is the most mysterious of any of the wide receivers this year among the top 10. Odell Beckham could be anywhere from number 1 overall among wide receivers, heck, maybe even 1 overall among everybody, all the way down to maybe a wide receiver 2. I have Odell Beckham at 7, mostly because I just don't think he's safe. ESPN has him at 4. Where do you have him, Johnny?
I have him at 4 as well. Here, let me throw some stats out for you, because I know you love stats, Damien.
I do.
Randy Moss in 1998, his rookie season, had the best rookie season of all time. Better than anyone else. 1,313 yards. That's in 16 games. Odell Beckham did 1,305 in only 12. He is faster than everyone on the field when he plays the game. He is probably the best athlete on the field. I don't care who they're playing. I think he is this generation Randy Moss. Again, he's had 1 year. His intangibles when he plays football are out of this world. He runs by defensive backs like their feet are in sand. Obviously his hand-eye coordination is off the charts. I should have him higher, but I have him at 4. Listen, I think he's just going to get better. I wouldn't be surprised if he has an 1,800 receiving yard season at one point. Again, yes, I am a Giants homer when it comes to my team. Fantasy, I am a realist. I understand that there is that injury risk. There's, listen, he missed 4 games last year because of a hamstring. And as of right now, he missed OTAs because of a hamstring. But I think Odell Beckham, if he plays all 16 games, he ends up being the number 1 receiver in football. And honestly, I don't think it's close.
I was fine with everything you said. I mean, everything you were saying, right? I was fine with this guy at number 4. And in most cases, I would still take him at 4, maybe higher. There's just one problem I have with that, Johnny, everything you said.
Yeah.
How the hell do you know Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb's middle name, but you didn't say Odell Beckham Jr.'s middle name? Just saying.
I can do only so much.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I'm fine with this. I'm fine with Odell Beckham Jr. possibly being a little bit higher, but I wouldn't put him much higher. In my opinion, I would potentially take him at the same level as a Demaryius Thomas, just because of his because he's the only heavy mouth to feed in New York. I understand there are other guys, I think, Cruz and Donnell, but it's nothing like in Denver where you've got Welker and Thomas and
they don't have Welker.
Or, I'm sorry, Sanders and Thomas. You know what I'm saying? Granted, they don't have Julius Thomas, so maybe that helps Demaryius Thomas. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Odell Beckham Jr. a lot. I think he's going to have another big year. I don't think his first year was a flash in the pan. I do think Victor Cruz suffers big time this year because of Odell Beckham's emergence as just a monster.
Okay, so there's ODB moving up to number 3. Man, I'm like rhyming everything. I'm not intending to do this. I'm like a 1980s DJ here. Number 3 is a guy who, well, I'll hold off on number 3. I want to hear what you guys have to say. According to ESPN rankings, Dez Bryant at number 3. Johnny, what do you got?
Actually, I had Dez Bryant at number 2 overall for me. I have Demaryius Thomas for me at 3, but Dez Bryant, listen, he's a stud. 247 yards. He's probably as consistent as a wide receiver as you will find. Seems like he's never hurt. He catches a ton of balls. He caught almost 90 balls last year, 16 touchdowns. And now with not having DeMarco Murray there, I think they're going to throw the ball even more. I think Tony Romo's stock goes down a little bit, but I think Dez Bryant's going to go up a little bit because I think I think Romo's going to throw a lot more picks. But I think Dez Bryant still needs to get fed. Listen, They had their choice last year to keep either DeMarco Murray or Dez Bryant. They put all their chips on Dez Bryant, and they're gonna feed him like a number one receiver in the league. You know, even if I have him at 2, they're gonna treat him like a number 1.
Not only did they make that decision, but they made the right decision. Dez Bryant is amazing. The combination of size, speed, his hands. He's a smart player. He was trained by your boy Prime Time.
That's right.
Listen, Dez Bryant is number 2 on my list. In fact, I want to amend something that I had said before. Odell Beckham is number 3 on my list, ahead of ESPN's number 2. Okay, so I have ESPN's number 2 that we'll get to all the way down to number 4. I have Beckham at 3. I have Dez Bryant at number 2. I love Dez Bryant this year. And this isn't to just go against something you said, John, but you made me think of a good point that I wanted to bring up. Is that you mentioned that Tony Romo, you think is going to be on the decline this year. I think I've heard people singing about Tony Romo's demise as a quarterback from a fantasy and just a regular football perspective for the last 5 years, and all the guy does is perform. He is a solid. I mean, when you're not talking about Aaron Rodgers, you know what I mean, and Peyton Manning and Brady, I'd be hard pressed to see that the numbers don't show Tony Romo is one of the most consistently strong fantasy quarterbacks there are. The guy shows up. He can't show up and hold a field goal, in the playoffs, but he can show up and throw touchdowns and move the ball downfield in the regular season. Dez Bryant's number 2 on my list, hands down.
I am going to go ahead and take the pick for this argument. I have Dez Bryant at number 1 overall. I have him even ahead of ESPN's 1. And here's why, boys. If you want to talk about the single most talented wide receiver in the game right now, I don't mean 2 years ago, which would have been
Dez Bryant.
It's Dez Bryant all day. He is a beast. He's tall. He's a red zone target. Listen, guys, last year he had 88 catches. That was like 12th on the list. I think he gets more catches than 88 this year because of all the reasons Johnny listed. The guy had 16 touchdowns. Dez Bryant is going to destroy. He's never injured. I think he's never missed a game since 2011. I have him at number 1 overall. Number 2, according to ESPN, I think it sounds like a guy that we all sort of disagree with ESPN on this list. I'm not sure if you do or not, Johnny, but I'll start with Sean because I know, Sean, you feel like this guy's too high as well. I'll let Sean take my argument for this. Demaryius Thomas, number 2 overall. What do you think?
Demaryius Thomas, you lost Wes Welker. He took some attention away from you from a coverage standpoint. Peyton Manning, I think this is the first year that you see a noticeable decline in Peyton Manning's points, and output from the quarterback standpoint. Last week we talked about this, Damien, and I stand by what I said. The fact that this is the first time that Peyton Manning ever really had to think about if he wanted to come back and play for another year, and I understand professional players know how to let things go and move on, but I think last year their loss in the playoffs, I think that hurt him. I think that sticks with him a little bit, and I think that was part of the reason he also had to consider whether or not he was going to come back and play this year. I think Peyton Manning starts to go on the decline, and naturally that's going to lead to decline in his impact on his wide receivers from a fantasy perspective. Losing Wes Welker hurts. I understand Emmanuel Sanders had a strong year this year. I don't think Emmanuel Sanders has as strong of a year this year. Plus, I think losing Julius Thomas is a big deal for this team. I see Demaryius Thomas at 4. It would not shock me, and I'll say it. It would not shock me if at the end of this year, from a fantasy standpoint, if Demaryius Thomas falls outside of the top 5, maybe down to 7 at the end of the year.
I think you just nailed it, Sean. To me, the biggest detriment to Demaryius Thomas is losing Julius Thomas. He was Peyton Manning's other go-to guy. And they had to treat a tight end like a wide receiver in that offense. They had to put cornerbacks on the tight end, they don't got to do that now. I think they're going to put more attention on Demaryius Thomas and say Emmanuel Sanders beat us, and I think they're going to try and take Demaryius Thomas out. And I think he's sure. I have him as number 3, which is still a great ranking. Listen, still had 11 touchdowns last year. I think he's on. I think he's on the decline. Not that he, personally is going down, but I think his cast around him is obviously not as good as it was last year.
Damian.
Yeah, when we're looking up at the top of these rankings, I mean, we'd be happy with any of these guys. Realistically, I have Thomas at 5. He's a great talent. I think he's 26 years old, but just you don't like him as much as some of these other guys. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, I just wanted to say before you get to your number 1, that is ESPN's consensus number 1. I want to say that I just became a sheep, Damian. You have. I was on the fence about Dez Bryant and where to put him in my rankings, and I was on the fence about whether I wanted him as number 1 or number 2 on my list, and I was so on the fence about it. But I said, the consensus is a good pick. I guess I have to keep him 2, but I'm not. I'm also moving Dez Bryant to number 1 on my list.
Hey,
I am.
There it is. There it is. Best receiver in the game, man. Dez Bryant, he won't do you wrong. Now, in our draft this year, you won't have an opportunity to pick him. But that's okay. The number 1 overall ranked player on ESPN rankings, I shouldn't say player, I should say wide receivers, Antonio Brown. Johnny, what do you think?
I think number 1 overall. I think, with having Big Ben there, big arm, Antonio Brown, big touchdowns. It's I don't. Right now, again, unless something changes, I have it number 1, and I think it's 277 fantasy points last year. It's not a fluke.
I don't think it's a fluke. It wouldn't shock me if he finished number 1 amongst fantasy wideouts. I think it really is a coin flip between him and Dez Bryant. I think I don't really have a lot to say about Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
He's a young, talented kid. He's got a quarterback with a strong arm who knows how to make plays fall into his back and still complete it. He knows how to find his targets in the red zone, and Antonio Brown seems to be available when needed. I'm fine with Antonio Brown at number 1. I'm gonna take Dez Bryant at number 1 if I had my choice between the 2 guys. But really, I wouldn't complain about either one. Let's put it this way: you could give me either one of those guys, I wouldn't have a problem. But and I could even say the same with Odell Beckham. I wouldn't be quite as happy if I had to take Demaryius Thomas because then I feel like I have some decisions to make. So any of those top 3 guys on my list, Brown, Bryant, and Beckham, I would take any one of them. Any one of them.
Yeah. Again, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, Damian.
No, go ahead, Johnny. You got it, man.
I was gonna say, with us doing this list, really the top 5 guys, we're looking for things to nitpick about them. Again, they're all, the next level wide receiver. So
I'll say if you're playing in a PPR league and you're listening to this right now, take Antonio Brown number 1 overall. Don't look back. Antonio Brown all day. He is a target hog. He's going to get so many catches.
I agree.
In a standard league, I have Bryant only because there's no way that Antonio Brown is going to get more touchdown catches than Dez Bryant on a typical year. Dez Bryant is simply going to get more touchdown catches. Those are the top 10 wide receivers. The only thing left to do, boys, is a little bit of mock and roll time. So we're going to do a mock and roll here. I'm going to put you guys up against each other, well, potentially against each other. You might come down on the same side, and that's okay. I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds to decide which player you would draft between the 2 players. They're going to be wide receivers because today is our wide receiver day, of course. And here's what I'll say. On the ESPN rankings, they're ranked only 2 spaces apart, but these are the types of decisions that we have to make as fantasy owners come draft time. Which guy do you take? 2 very different guys ranked very closely together. We're going to start with our guest. I won't say guest now. He's a permanent host, but this is his first day here, so we'll start with you, Johnny. You're the new guy. We'll start with you, and the 2 guys that we're going to be mock and rolling are Deshaun Jackson versus Keenan Allen. So we'll put you up on the board for 30 seconds in time. 30 seconds, Johnny. Deshaun Jackson or Keenan Allen? You're on the clock. Go for it.
Okay, I'm actually going to go with Keenan Allen, and here's why. Listen, both guys went to Cal State. Go Bears. Listen, he's 23 years old. He had 77 catches to Deshaun Jackson's 56. Listen, Deshaun Jackson is the prototypical boom or bust receiver. Here's his stats: 6-1, 25 points, 0, 29, 25, 4, 15, 20, 3, 3, 16, 0, 1, then 2 more 14s, which doesn't count. But Keenan Allen has a better quarterback. Antonio Gates is suspended, and listen, he's a young guy. He's going to catch a lot more ball. He has more opportunity. I just think that overall at the end of the year, Keenan Allen has the better fantasy season, more fantasy points.
All right, there it is. Deshaun Jackson versus Keenan Allen, 30 seconds. You're on the clock.
You never saw it coming. I'm also going to go with Keenan Allen on this one. Keenan Allen had a down year in 2014. 2013, he led all rookie wide receivers in every statistical category that mattered from a fantasy perspective. Deshaun Jackson is a boomer bust guy. I do like Deshaun Jackson. I think he does have a lot of value, especially because he is the go-to guy in Washington. That being said, Johnny makes a great point. Phillip Rivers all day over anybody you put under center in Washington. I'm going to take Keenan Allen. I think he's got a comeback year this year. I think last year was a fluke, but he's got to prove it on the field and show that he's still got that 4.71 combine speed that he had.
Can I add just one more thing real quick? Typically this position at this stage in your fantasy draft, Deshaun Jackson, they're probably going to be your flex position. I don't know that they'd be your number 2. I would probably put either one of them in my flex, and I want a consistent guy who I know is going to get me points. That's why I would go with Keenan Allen, because I don't trust Deshaun Jackson on a weekly basis.
I want to take that one step further, just real quick. Okay, I think this year, if Keenan Allen is going to prove that he belongs in the fantasy in a strong fantasy football discussion, he has to get back to 2013 numbers, and he has to get back to being a number 2 fantasy wide receiver.
And here's what I'll say to wrap it up before I let Sean take it and close the show.
Tell us about the sauce.
Yeah, this is what I want to say. So one of the things that we are bringing to you here at the Mock and Roll Show is we've developed an original formula, which we've appropriately given the acronym SAUS, S-A-U-S, and that's what I'm using for my rankings. Now, Johnny and Sean are not officially using those rankings. Those two guys they're just naturally great. They just shoot from the hip. They shoot from the gut. They know what they're talking about. But I've come up with this formula for ranking players. It's called the sauce. And so now I'm gonna say who the winner is. Now, of course, in fantasy football, we know that we all could be completely wrong, and that's just the way it goes. That's the challenge and the awesomeness of this game. But according to the official sauce rankings, the winner is, I'm going to explain to you as follows. So the first S stands for, well, the first S stands for what is your situation. So the situation, who has the better situation, has to clearly go to Keenan Allen, as you guys articulated, much better quarterback, Phillip Rivers versus RG3. Also, Deshaun Jackson, is he the 1A or is he the 1B? Not entirely sure. We know Keenan Allen's the 1A on his team. Team situation, those points go to Keenan Allen. When you talk about ability, I have to give ability to Deshaun Jackson by a little bit. The better talent, more explosive, so he gets a slight edge on ability. When you talk about the U in sauce, you talk about upside. Who has the higher upside this year? And it has to be Keenan Allen. Deshaun Jackson's upside is capped by his lack of targets. He only caught 56 balls last year. He's not thrown the ball very often. And finally, safety. How injury-prone is a player and how reliable and consistent are they? Clearly, the safer player here is Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is the winner. We're all right. And, boys, can we just sing a little Kumbaya here together?
I just made a gorilla hand movement.
I think we're all best served here, Damien, if you're the only one that sings. I particularly love you, John, but I don't want to hear you sing. I've heard you sing, and I hate the sound of my own voice. So, Damien, you can go ahead and sing Kumbaya for us if you'd like.
I'm going to go ahead and pass on that tonight. Maybe next time.
All right. Damien, it's been a pleasure doing the show. John, it was great to have you back on the air. and I look forward to seeing you next week. That's going to be it for us tonight on the Mock and Roll Show. Please stay in touch, share the show, tell people about it, spread it around. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get you involved in the show. Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Mock and Roll Show. This show will be available that you can rewatch it right on YouTube immediately following the show, along with last week's episode. Also, if you use iTunes, go to iTunes, subscribe to the Mock and Roll Show podcast, which will be up in the next couple of days. The first episode from last Wednesday. Now, what's that?
Well, we're up on iTunes now.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Last week's episode is up right now. We'll get this week's episode up as soon as possible. So again, subscribe, download, and share that. But again, get in touch with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to talk about your feelings on different positions live on the air. Next week, we're going to be talking about quarterbacks, which is one of the most overrated first-round positions in my opinion. But we'll talk about that. Anyway, I want to thank you guys all for checking out the show. Stay in touch with us. We'll be back next Wednesday live on YouTube, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You've been watching the Mock and Roll Show. And for Damian, Johnny, and myself, we'll see you next week.